My children's drawings revealed my wife's affair. The camera footage was more devastating than I could have imagined. The silent evidence. James always made it a habit to look through his children's drawings. 5-year-old Emma and 6-year-old Ben loved to sketch their family, crude, colorful depictions of their home, their dog, and the four of them holding hands. He kept their artwork in a folder, a growing archive of their childhood. But one evening, as he flipped through Ben's latest sketches, something caught his eye. In most drawings, James was tall, with short brown hair and a blue shirt, just like in real life. But in a few others, the man labeled Daddy had dark, slicked back hair, a sharp jawline, and a black coat. James didn't own a black coat. He frowned. "Hey, buddy," he said carefully. "Who's this?" Ben barely glanced up from his toy cars. "You, Daddy." James' chest tightened. "But I don't look like that." Ben shrugged. "Sometimes you do." James checked Emma's drawings next. In one, Daddy had the hint of a beard. He was always clean-shaven. In another, he was holding a golf club. James had never played golf. His hands trembled slightly as he closed the folder. That night, he watched his wife, Lauren, as she laughed on the phone before quickly hanging up. "Just Sarah from work," she said when she noticed him looking. James nodded, smiling like nothing was wrong. He started paying attention. Lauren had been working late more often. She dressed up on days he wasn't home. And sometimes, when he walked into a room, she'd lock her phone too quickly. But he didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he waited. He checked the kids' drawings every day, noting the inconsistencies. The man in the pictures was always different from him, sometimes wearing a watch James didn't own, sometimes with a tattoo on his forearm. One afternoon, while Lauren was out, he dug deeper. He found a receipt in her purse for a restaurant he'd never been to. A hotel keycard tucked in the back of her drawer. Still, he said nothing. Then, one evening, Emma handed him a new drawing. "This is you and Mommy at the park." James stared at it. The man in the picture had his arm around Lauren. He had dark, slicked back hair, a tattoo on his forearm, the same light beard, and wearing sunglasses. Beside them, in the corner of the page, was a car. Though drawn with a silver crayon by a kindergartner, the car was unmistakable with its signature twin-kidney grille, marking it as a BMW. James knew exactly who drove a silver BMW. Mark. Lauren's work friend. The one who had just been calling about a work project. Whenever James walked in the room unexpectedly, and caught her on the phone after 11 p.m. That night, as Lauren slept beside him, James lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The evidence was all there, not in angry accusations or tearful confessions, but in the innocent, unfiltered honesty of his children's crayon drawings. He didn't say a word. Not yet. Because now, he had a plan. The silent observer. James didn't sleep that night. By dawn, his mind was clear, his resolve hardened. He kissed Lauren's forehead as she slept, then left for work early, but not before stopping at an electronics store. The cameras were small, wireless, and easy to hide. One in the living room, disguised as a smoke detector. Another in the bedroom, nestled among books on the shelf. A third in the kitchen, angled just right to catch the back door. He installed them all during his lunch break while Lauren was out with the kids. For days he watched. At first, nothing. Just the usual routine. Lauren making breakfast, playing with the kids, scrolling through her phone. But then, on Thursday afternoon, while James was supposed to be at a conference across town, his phone buzzed with a motion alert. He pulled up the feed. A silver BMW rolled into the driveway. Mark stepped out, all sharp smiles and confident strides. Lauren greeted him at the door, her body language instantly different, lighter, more animated. The way she used to be with James years ago. The camera in the living room caught them kissing before they even made it to the couch. James' stomach twisted, but his hands stayed steady. He saved the footage. Over the next 2 weeks, he gathered more. Mark came over every Thursday, always when James was working late. Sometimes they stayed in the living room, drinking wine. Other times, they disappeared into the bedroom. The worst part? The kids were there. Emma and Ben didn't appear in the footage much. They were usually in their rooms or outside when Mark visited, but James noticed small things. The way Lauren would hurry them upstairs with a movie before Mark arrived. The way Ben once walked in on them and Lauren quickly pulled Mark away, laughing nervously. His children knew. Not the truth, maybe, but enough to draw that other man in their pictures. Enough to feel the shift in their home. James had everything he needed. Dates, times, footage. Enough for divorce court. Enough to ruin Mark's marriage too. He'd done some digging. The man had a wife and a newborn. But he didn't act yet. Because now, he had one final question. How long had this been going on? He checked the kids' drawings again, the older ones. The other daddy sketches went back months. Then he remembered Lauren's girl's trip to Miami 6 months ago. The one where she'd barely answered his calls. The one where her response to him initiating intimacy as a welcome back felt very unwelcome indeed. James booked a flight to Miami the next day. He was done watching. Now, it was time to dig deeper.
Lauren's perfect lie. Lauren was pouring a glass of wine when James walked into the kitchen, suitcase in hand. Last-minute trip, he said, kissing her cheek. Miami. Just like your girl's weekend last year. The wineglass nearly slipped from her fingers. Oh. She kept her voice light. That's sudden. Yeah, client emergency. James scrolled through his phone, casual. Speaking of, you said the hotel you stayed at was great. What was the name again? Her pulse spiked. She had raved about the hotel, because Mark had booked it for them. The Delano, she said smoothly. South Beach. Gorgeous pools. James nodded, typing. Perfect. I'll try to get a room there. Good luck, she laughed. It books up fast. The moment he left, she exhaled. She had always been careful. Deleting texts. Using a separate email. Making sure Mark never stayed too long when the kids were home. And it had worked. James was oblivious. Sweet, trusting James, who still kissed her goodbye like nothing was wrong. She took her wine to the couch, scrolling through her hidden photos, Mark's hands on her waist in Miami. The rumpled sheets of their hotel room. The way he looked at her, like she was something hungered for, not just a wife, a mother. A thrill ran through her. She hadn't planned the affair. It just happened. Mark had always been there, laughing at her jokes at work parties, texting her after meetings. Then one night, drinks turned into dinner turned into his hands pushing her against her car in the parking garage. And just like that, she was someone else. Her phone buzzed. Mark. Miss you. When can I see you? She smiled, typing back. Soon. James is going to Miami. A pause. Then. Wait. Miami? Like us? Her stomach dropped. Why was James going to Miami so suddenly? And why had he asked about the hotel? She replayed the conversation in her head, his tone, his expression. Had there been something off? No. Impossible. She was just paranoid. Still, she opened her email, double-checking that all her confirmations from the trip were deleted. Everything was clean. She took a long sip of wine. She was fine. She had always been careful. Hadn't she?
The trap. James waited until Lauren left to pick up the kids before making the call. His fingers hovered over the number he dug up after weeks of quiet searching. Mark's wife, Natalie. She answered on the third ring. Natalie? This is James. Lauren's husband. A pause. Then cautious curiosity. Oh, hi. I think our spouses are having an affair. Silence. Then a sharp inhale. What? Her voice cracked. James kept his tone steady. I have proof. And I think they met in Miami 6 months ago. I'm flying there tomorrow to confirm. I'd like you to come with me. Another pause. Then, quietly, I have a newborn. I know. James clenched his jaw. But Mark just dropped him off with your in-laws, didn't he? A shaky breath. How did you? Because he's at my house right now.
Lauren's house, 3:47 p.m. Mark's hands were all over her the second the door closed. We have an hour before the kids get back, Lauren gasped as he pushed her against the wall. Plenty of time. He smirked, kissing her neck in that way that made her knees weak. She should have been exhilarated. But something nagged at her, James' sudden trip, the way he'd asked about the hotel. Mark, she murmured between kisses, did you tell anyone about Miami? He pulled back slightly. What? No. You're sure? Babe, relax. He cupped her face. We're careful. No one knows. She wanted to believe him. But as he led her to the couch, her stomach twisted.
Miami, 8:32 p.m. James and Natalie stood outside the Delano's front desk. We're looking for a reservation under Mark Carter or Lauren Hart, James said smoothly. The clerk hesitated. I can't disclose. Natalie slid her ID across the counter. I'm his wife. And I need to know if he booked a room here 6 months ago. The clerk's eyes flicked between them. Then, with a quiet sigh, she typed. A few clicks later, there it was. Mark Carter. A king suite. 6 months ago. The same weekend as Lauren's girls' trip. Natalie's hands shook. That was 2 weeks after our son was born. James pulled up his security app, showing her the live feed from his living room. Mark and Lauren, tangled together on their couch. Natalie made a sound like a wounded animal. James closed the app. Now we wait. He knew that he didn't have to watch every sordid detail. The cameras had audio. And everything they said next would be recorded.
The illusion of control. Lauren silenced her phone as another text from James lit up the screen. Flight landed. Miami's beautiful. Wish you were here. She rolled her eyes and tossed the phone onto the bed. Mark lounged beside her, shirtless, scrolling through his own messages. Natalie thinks I'm at a work conference in Chicago, he said with a smirk. Sent me a pic of the baby. Like I give a shit. Lauren laughed, running a hand through his hair. James asked about the hotel we stayed at in Miami. Like he'd ever booked something that nice for himself. Mark pulled her closer. They're both clueless. A sudden knock at the door made them both freeze. Mommy? Emma's voice called from the hallway. Lauren shot upright, pressing a finger to Mark's lips. Stay here. Don't make a sound. She slipped out, closing the bedroom door behind her, and plastered on a smile for her daughter. What's up, sweetie? Emma held up a crayon drawing. Look. I made our family. Lauren's blood ran cold. There they were, stick figure Mommy, Emma, Ben, and a tall, dark-haired man labeled Daddy, but it wasn't James. It was Mark. Her throat tightened. Honey. Daddy has brown hair, remember? Emma blinked. But Uncle Mark. No. Lauren's voice came out sharper than she intended. She forced a laugh. Let's draw it again, okay? She spent the next hour distracting the kids with cartoons and snacks, her mind racing. When she finally slipped back into the bedroom, Mark was smirking at her. Problem? Lauren exhaled. Just the kids being weird. They'll forget. Mark pulled her onto the bed. Relax. James isn't some genius. He's a glorified accountant. She kissed him, pushing the unease down. But later, as she lay awake in the dark, Mark snoring beside her, she stared at her phone. James had texted again. You were right about the hotel. The view is incredible. A chill crept up her spine. Why did that feel like a threat?
The reckoning. The attorney's office was cold, sterile, the kind of place where lives were dismantled with signatures and legal jargon. James sat across from Natalie, their shared divorce attorney, Bill Reynolds, flipping through the folder of evidence between them. This is more than enough. Reynolds adjusted his glasses. Adultery, exposing the children to the affair partner, deception. Courts don't look kindly on this, especially with the recordings. James kept his face neutral, but his fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. The audio from the cameras had been damning. Lauren and Mark laughing about how clueless their spouses were, how easy it had been to lie. The worst part? Hearing his own children in the background, oblivious to the man hiding in their parents' bedroom. Natalie's voice was quiet but firm. I want full custody of my son. Mark barely even looks at him. James nodded. Same. Lauren brought that man into our home while I was gone. She led him around our kids like it was nothing. Reynolds steepled his fingers. Given the evidence, we have leverage. We can push for full custody with supervised visitation, at least initially. But we'll need to move carefully. No. James cut in. Not carefully. Decisively. He pulled out one last piece of evidence, a screenshot from the nanny cam in the kids' playroom. Mark, sitting on the couch with Lauren, while Emma played on the floor just feet away. She didn't just hide him in the bedroom. She let him into their space. Into their lives. James' voice was steel. I'm not letting her spin this as a mistake. Natalie's jaw clenched. Mark's going to fight me on custody just to save face. But he doesn't actually want our son. Reynolds exhaled. Then we hit them both at the same time. Serve the papers, expose the affair, and demand immediate temporary orders for custody. No room for them to coordinate a defense. James leaned forward. When? Tomorrow. A beat of silence. Then Natalie reached over, squeezing James' hand, just once. A silent pact. James didn't flinch. For weeks he'd watched. Waited. Let Lauren think she was still in control. Now she'd learn what clueless really looked like.
The next morning, Lauren was making coffee when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a process server holding an envelope. Lauren Hart? Yes. You've been served. And just like that, the illusion shattered. The house of cards collapses. The envelope felt like a live grenade in Lauren's hands. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Full custody. Adultery as grounds. Her vision blurred. The words, evidence of misconduct, including recorded instances of the affair partner present in the marital home, burned into her retinas. Recorded? Her phone rang, Mark's name flashing like a warning. She answered, her voice a hollow whisper. You got them too. What the fuck did you do? Mark's voice was a razor blade. Natalie has fucking audio of us, Lauren. How does she have? I don't know. Her hands shook. James must have. Then it hit her. The sudden Miami trip. The questions about the hotel. The way he'd looked at her that last morning. He knew. He knew the whole time. Mark was still ranting. My attorney says Natalie's pushing for full custody, claiming I'm unfit, this is going to fucking destroy me. Lauren barely heard him. She was staring at Emma's drawing still taped to the fridge, the one with Mark labeled as Daddy. The kids knew. James knew. And he'd let her think she was winning. A sick, hysterical laugh bubbled up in her throat. Mark snapped. This isn't funny. No, she said softly. It's not. She hung up and sank to the floor, the divorce papers spilling around her. The worst part wasn't him discovering her betrayal. It was realizing she'd never been in control at all.
2 years later, the park bench. James watched Emma and Ben chase each other across the sun-dappled grass, their laughter ringing through the crisp autumn air. Nearby, Natalie pushed her now-toddler son on the swing, his delighted squeals blending with the sounds of the park. It had been 2 years since the divorce. 2 years of rebuilding. Natalie walked over and sat beside him on the bench, handing him a coffee. They've got endless energy today, she said, nodding toward the kids. James took the cup with a grateful smile. Emma's been begging for a puppy. I keep telling her we're not quite there yet. Natalie chuckled. Mark still hasn't bothered with visitation. Nodding, James sipped his coffee, the bitterness of the drink nothing compared to the memory. Lauren sees them every other weekend, but she's different now. Like she's going through the motions. Natalie sighed. Mark fought for nothing. Not even his son. She glanced toward her boy, now toddling after Ben. Sometimes I wonder if he even remembers he has a child. A comfortable silence settled between them. They weren't romantic, that had never been the point, but there was an unspoken understanding, a bond forged in shared betrayal and survival. James exhaled slowly. You ever think about how different things would have been if we hadn't found out? Natalie's smile was sad but resolute. Every day. But then I look at this. She gestured to the kids, to the quiet strength between them. And I realize we didn't lose anything worth keeping. James nodded. Somewhere in the distance, Emma called. Dad, watch this! As she leaped off the swing, arms outstretched like she could fly. And for the first time in years, James felt something settle inside him. Not happiness, exactly, but something just as valuable. Peace.